Roses are red, violets are blue. Will Smith punched Chris Rock, 'cause that joke was cruel. But however, dude, that's not cool. Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel with absolutely no theme. This is going to be a get ready with me / informational video about endometriosis because it is Endometriosis Awareness Month and 1 out of 10 women have endometriosis, which makes it a very, very common disease. I personally have endometriosis. I have suspected endometriosis. I have not personally done the surgery to fully find out. I discuss more about that later on in the video. It is really hard to get a diagnosis, and the important part is in some countries maybe to get the diagnosis, but where I live right now, which is in Sweden, it is more important that I actually get treated for it. So we're treating it as if it's endometriosis, and me and my doctor believe that it is, and we're convinced that it is. So I have endometriosis, even though it doesn't say endometriosis specifically as a diagnosis because I haven't done the surgery to find out if it specifically is, but we are convinced that it is. So I am talking from the perspective of myself with a lot of these things. Later on in the video I talk some more personal things about things that have happened and things that a lot of people with endometriosis kind of have to deal with. And then as the most important part, I would hope that you can find some educated and understanding friends and family around you and find a doctor who believes you, because that is a lot easier said than done. I'm talking quite robotically because I don't want to get emotional, so I'm sorry about that, but that is how I got through talking about this at all. Please subscribe and leave a comment, like the video, whichever works best for you. Very few people watching are actually subscribed to my channel, and it means a lot to me if you would do that. And with that said, if you want to see me do this makeup look, you can keep on watching and just watch for the makeup and learn something along the way. I have a little bit of a different video today because it is March. It is not only my birthday month, but it is also Endometriosis Awareness Month. So I'm going to do a normal get ready with me, but my topic of conversation is not going to be makeup, and I will be linking what I'm using down in the description box below in case you're interested. If I end up doing an at all interesting look, you can put down below if you want more of a tutorial where I tell you what I do and how I use it and everything, but that's not going to be this video. I'm going to start with some primer. I'm going to maybe mention a few things I do here and there, so it's going to be a little makeup-y, but mostly for my own peace of mind than anything else. Okay, my ring light doesn't work because I don't have an adapter that works with the cord. So we're gonna have to deal with this lighting going in and out of being completely orange. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is, okay? I will start off by just saying that I have endometriosis. To actually be diagnosed with endometriosis usually takes between 8 to 10 years. With leaning towards 10 years being more so the normal mark. One second. Accidentally just pulled over my grow light and some plants on top of one of my cabinets. So that's fun. What are you doing? Before I go into so much about me personally or what I have done or haven't done, I will say right away I haven't had any surgeries for it. Endometriosis is a chronic menstrual related disease that involves the lining of the uterus growing outside of the uterus. And it is extremely painful. It can and do grow onto other parts of organs or completely onto other organs, and in many cases it glues organs together. Like the lining tissue grows and completely glues two organs together. Things that are close to the uterus usually come first, and then they get glued together and it's just one big mess, and it creates an inflammation for the immune system, so the immune system thinks that it has a lot to do. And because it's a chronic disease, it cannot be cured. There is no cure whatsoever. There's no cure. I don't even think there's anything close to a cure. I mean, it can take 10 years to even get diagnosed, so I don't think a cure is even close to where we're at. And there's not that much research being put into it that I'm aware of. I think Australia has put some money towards researching it, and I think they're right now at the forefront from what I've gathered. And because it is a chronic disease, you can assume that it immensely affects every part of your life. There is no part of your life that is not affected by this. It is your physical health, your mental health, your social life, your relationships. Everything gets immensely affected by this disease. Everything that is done to treat it is essentially to slow it down and to ease the symptoms of the patient that has it. And for most people, really the only cure is to grow old, because then you go into menopause, and when you go into menopause, your estrogen levels sink very low, and that kind of eases up the disease. When to treat it and things to slow it down, for me personally, have been hormonal treatment. Different types of hormonal treatment. I have one right now that slowly is starting to somewhat work. It's not working by any means yet. It has worked once and then it got worse again, and now we're slowly going towards something that might work in the end, even though it's not a quick fix. There's no quick fix with anything with endometriosis. There's nothing that one person does that works for everybody. It's very individual. Every part of this disease is from person to person. It's extremely individual. What works for some people might not at all work for somebody else. It's the type of thing where you, with your doctor, obviously have to try. It's trial and error. You have to try your way through what might work for you, and what doesn't work for you, you have to wait and see. And when you start trying a new form of something, say you start a new hormonal treatment, you go on a new pill, or anything like that, it usually takes between 3 to 4 months before you even know if what you're doing is working. It's a very, very slow and frustrating process, and it takes up a lot of time and energy from your life. The other thing that you can do that isn't hormonal treatment is usually, if that's not working, or if it gets bad enough, or if an organ needs to have the endo that has grown onto it removed, or maybe you want to have a, what's it called, a hypersectomy, if you remove your womb and everything. A lot of people do that once they've had kids. Some people do it beforehand to try to remove where the endo grows from. That's not a cure by any means. It doesn't mean that it goes away. It can have grown onto other organs and they can continue to grow. There's no guarantee. Even with surgery, there's absolutely no guarantee. But surgical treatment is something that a lot of people do as well. That is something that you can do. In some cases you don't have a choice, depending on where the endo grows, and if it starts to cause too much problems for you and your health, then you might have to go in and remove parts of organs or total organs where the endo has grown too much onto it or taken over and caused too much harm to that organ. But really what most people see as symptoms, and the biggest symptom really, is its period-related pain. And when I say period-related pain, I don't just mean cramps. I mean extreme period-related pain. And you can't focus, you can't do anything. So most people just think that they have cramps. Oh, but I have really bad cramps compared to your cramps. And you might have insane cramps. A lot of people throw up and faint from the pain, and because the pain gets so much that the body doesn't know how to handle that pain response that it gives, so you throw up or you faint sometimes, and you're trying to get by minute. You're not capable, essentially, when you're in that state of doing a lot. It gets really hard to sleep. It gets really impossible for me personally to do things, to lift something, to focus on something. It becomes impossible because of the pains. And the period pains, usually what will show you endometriosis is it's not just when you're on your period, it's in between your period. And these extreme period pains leads to not just you being in pain or needing to take a painkiller and then it's over. It doesn't work like that. You're gonna need a lot stronger painkillers, and they're still probably not gonna work that well. To be completely honest, it will lead to being the type of pain where you have to be home from school or you have to stay home from work. There is no option of leaving your bed, essentially. I've had probably more time the last 6 years spent in my bed than out of it, and that absolutely fucking sucks. Like, I don't know what else to say. It just really sucks. I'm trying to keep it quite informational and just keep a straight face and tell you everything as it is, because I am trying not to get emotional talking about it, and being more informational helps that. So I'm sorry if I'm being very robotic, but it's my way of kind of being able to talk about it, essentially, without being emotional. I'm not sure how the personal bit about it is gonna work, but we're saving that to the end in case I completely lose it. I'm just putting on some bronzer and using it kind of as a contour as well. I would just also like to say, if you're watching this right now and you're the kind of person who believes that you can just push through and you can just do everything you want and everything, and everyone's just being whiny or whatever, I would like to encourage you to research and realize that everybody's situation isn't yours. You might not personally realize or be able to understand how much pain somebody is in or how that affects them in a way that means that they can't be there, other aspects of their life that affects, and how overwhelming that can be. However, that does not mean that those aspects and that pain does not exist. I would just like to stress that, because any kind of comments that are negative towards people who are dealing with something that you're not is not going to be welcome. That is not what this video is about. This is informational, and if you have questions, absolutely ask me a question, but don't try to tell me how to live my life and what's wrong or right, or what I can handle or should be able to handle or not, because I've had enough of that in my life. As an example of not being able to go to school or not being able to go to work, a few weeks back I woke up and I really needed to pee. My pain had been getting worse for a while and it was really bad that day, and because of the pain it took me literally an hour to actually get out of bed to pee. And it's not about what you want to do, it's about what you're capable of doing. And it's not like I had anything to gain from not getting up to pee, but I literally physically could not. So that's just one example of why sometimes going to work or going to school is not possible. If you can't even get up to do things that you absolutely physically need to do, then that's not going to be possible either. The reason I'm doing my makeup while doing this, by the way, is because this is how I handled distracting myself from everything it cost having this disease. Doing my makeup and just like indulging into it and not thinking was my way of coping and my way of distracting my mind from the pain and everything that came with having this disease and being home a lot, and then the outsider part of all of that and how that affected me personally. That was my way of dealing with it, so I'm kind of implementing that right now by just doing my makeup. You will also find, if you don't know if you might have endometriosis, that a lot of people go to a doctor for problems with their stomach and their like bowel movements, I guess you could say, but like their stomach issues, maybe going to the toilet is a bit of an issue, that kind of thing. There's a lot of times when you go for that before you realize that you have endometriosis, and you can also be kind of falsely diagnosed with IBS, because a lot of things with endometriosis give similar symptoms to IBS. Your stomach is way more sensitive to different types of foods. Sometimes it reacts crazy and just swells up and gets irritated if you eat something that it doesn't agree with, and that obviously aligns with IBS. So a lot of times they think that they just have really bad cramps, and then that doesn't get connected with the other symptoms of your stomach not working right because of the lack of information within the healthcare system that isn't specifically gynecologists. I had like 2 years of my life where they were telling me, even though I was saying it was in the lower abdomen of my stomach, like really low down, that's where the pain was, and they were like, oh, you have acid reflux. And they kept giving me medication for that. And if you know, acid reflux, that shit sits right here. I was telling them I had pain here, and they kept telling me it was here. Like, I had so many doctors tell me that it was up there, and that's where the pain was, because it was so much easier for them. Because the other thing that I was describing, they had no clue what to do with that. So it's easier for them to say that this is what it is. And it's a very common issue that endometriosis patients don't get believed, and that they don't get the help that they need because of all of the issues, because they tend to be difficult patients to diagnose and to know what to do with, which is partly not being educated within the subject. It's just really difficult sometimes when you have to constantly advocate and tell people that what you're saying is true, and they will tell you that it's not. Like, to your face, they will say this isn't what it is, and you're not actually sick, and you've made this up, and you're over-exaggerating. We all know we're not, but you have to really stand your ground and try a new doctor after a new doctor until you find one that is willing to believe you. And even though that is difficult, even here, I am so happy to be living in a country that is Sweden, and that is our healthcare system, and the fact that I don't have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for my healthcare, because it becomes a lot. A lot of people also notice endometriosis through ovarian cysts, and cysts that can be filled with blood. You can sometimes get blood that leaks up into your stomach, and that kind of thing sometimes gets glossed over, or you think it's just a cyst, but usually that means that you have endometriosis. And endometriosis is a very common disease. I'm going to use this palette right here, and now, having explained endometriosis a little bit, I thought I would just go into more my personal experience with it. Not that personal, but more in general, maybe some personal things, what it's like to live with it. And to describe it firsthand, I would say that it affects every single aspect of your life, like I said before. It affects you physically, it affects you mentally, and it affects every part of your life. And it affects your social life, it affects your relationships, all of the things that I mentioned before. And outside of all the pain, for me, the social parts and the mental parts about it have been the hardest to deal with. Family around me having to understand it, kind of, because it's a lot to understand and grasp if you've never heard about it, which most people haven't. But it's a very serious disease, and it's really weird how it affects so many people, but it's talked about so extremely little, and I think that's very common within anything that's a female disease. It's not researched on as much, it's not cared about, and I think that we're kind of taught from when we were kids and when we grow in our teens that, oh well, cramps, it's just cramps. Like, it's just cramps. You just have cramps. And there is no understanding whatsoever of the difference between cramps and what somebody with endometriosis experiences if they get cramps. And it's not just when you're on your period, it's in between. It's a pain that lasts constantly, and even when you're on medication and it's good, it's not like you're not in pain. You're just in a tolerable amount of pain. The pain never fully goes away. You're just at a level where you can handle to live your life with it. Usually after people have had surgery, it doesn't fully go away. It just eases up and it becomes a lot less. What happens when you get these inflammations, the endo grows outside of your womb and it grows onto something else, and it can create like a sore, and that sore can bleed, and it causes an inflammation to occur in your body, which means that your own body attacks itself because it thinks that it is being attacked or there's an inflammation. It is something that it needs to fix. It is something that needs to be handled. So it starts attacking it with all of these antibodies and everything that it can. So essentially endometriosis is your immune system working against your own body, and it flares up. And for example, I get a fever. I have a fever quite often, like almost every day when I'm in pain, because there's an inflammation in my body. So a lot of the time when I was younger and I didn't know what was going on, it was only a couple years ago for me that I learned about endometriosis and realized that that's what I had, and found a doctor. It was actually a gynecologist who first told me that she thought I had it. And then I started researching it. At first I was in denial. I was like, no, I can't have that. That's so much, that's hard. Like, I don't want to. And then I started researching it more. And the more I researched it, the more I realized everything I read, I was like, tick, tick, tick. I had all of it, all of the symptoms. So then I found a doctor as now who has, with some other people at my hospital that I go to, my local hospital, who have an endometriosis team. And so that's when 2 years ago about now, I started going to the same gynecologist every time, because that way every time I got there, otherwise, which I did for 3 years, I had to start all over and start all over and start all over, explain everything again, and then they all came with the same first step, and I kept trying different version of a first step with different doctors for about 2, almost 3 years until I met her, and I'm so grateful for that. She's been incredible. And where I was going with the immune system thing, once I realized what I had, then it was easier for me to explain that, oh, I have endometriosis and that's why I'm not there today or something. But when I was younger and didn't know what was going on, if I were to say that I had cramps, no one would believe that that was a necessary thing to be home for. Everyone would look at you weird. And it was so much easier for me to then say that I had a fever or I was sick. And then I got sick extremely easily, and I still do. Like, someone coughs down on my street and I swear I have it, because my immune system is constantly working against the endometriosis. So it's focused everything there, so therefore I am more susceptible to other illnesses or the flu or things like that. And this was something that people around me did not want to understand. A lot of people that were my close friends were extremely ignorant when it came to my health. Just in general, they would tell me that no one can be sick that often. I had two of my friends sit me down and ask me why I was only sick when there were tests, which was something that in their minds they had deluded that I was, which wasn't true, first of all, because I had the sheets, papers from the school of when I was gone, and that was not just on tests. And it was ignorant because they clearly don't understand someone who really tries to be there. So, say the test is Friday. Usually they schedule it on end of weeks. You obviously want to do well on your test, so you push yourself to be there on the lessons so that you will know what is going to be on that test, so that you don't miss information that you need to learn for the test. And when you then pushed yourself that whole week, you crash. So then you miss the test. It has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that I wasn't there on test days, but they would not understand that, and even me explaining it wasn't really worth that much. I'm assuming that a lot of people who have endometriosis have had similar experiences when it comes to school and friends, and people not understanding and being quite ignorant towards the fact that health issues exist for other people. Even when you're young, you can still have issues. My health personally became a standing joke within that friend group that I was in. That wasn't my choice, it just happened, and it was very kind of damaging to me because I didn't know at the time why. I was extremely confused. I was upset by the fact that I felt like my body continued to fail me and I didn't know why. I was in a constant amount of pain that from like high school, I guess is what I would call it. I don't remember what the actual word is. And up, it staggered and it just became worse and worse and worse. And I didn't understand why. I didn't understand if it was something that I was doing. And I kept telling myself that everyone felt this way. And then I had a friend of mine who like refused to take a painkiller when she had cramps. And I was just like, yeah, no, this isn't the same. This isn't the same kind of pain. Because literally I could not stand if that was me. And I was on my period, like peak period, and just refused to take a painkiller. That was when I kind of realized that, yeah, no, this is something else. So I went to a lot of doctors for a long time. I had one doctor tell me that it was all in my head and that I was just being paranoid and not, I was making it up essentially, which is something that I heard from a lot of my friends as well. And that continued for a while. I also received something that I think a lot of people with endometriosis also experience, which is my friends telling me whenever I would say that I was late on homework or something, or they would say that they were late, and I was like, oh, I'm too. And I had a friend who looked at me and was like, it's so much easier for you to study and to keep up with school because you're home all the time. And I've never felt so devaluated, and that literally felt like someone punched me in the face, because anyone with endometriosis realizes the incredible amount of ignorance in that, because all I did when I was home and it was easier for me to study was lay in bed trying to get through minute by minute, hour by hour, like I said before. The pain takes completely over whenever you try to focus on something. You can't. And whenever you're in that state of pain, there's no sitting up and doing schoolwork, let alone being able to focus and understand anything that you're trying to learn. So I urge people that are watching to be more considerate and to maybe not speak on people's health, because you have no idea what might be going on. And they might not want to share that with you because of different reasons. Maybe because you're being quite ignorant towards it. Maybe because before you've been very critical towards the fact that they're home a lot. I want to also stress that no one is obligated to tell you why or to explain themselves when it comes to their health. It's a lot to handle. It's a lot to handle, and it's a lot to think about, and it's a lot to try to figure out, and they might not even know themselves what is happening, because I didn't know, and I was extremely frustrated and confused and trying to figure out what was happening and what was going on, and not understanding why my body was failing me, and it felt like it was working against me. And I've felt a lot of the time that it's hindering me in life, like it's stopping me from living in the way that I would want to, because I am 23 years old and I've spent most of the last 2 years, when I wanted to do a lot of other things, 80% in bed and in pain, and that is very frustrating, and it is incredibly hurtful to then on top of that have people either not believe you or not want to engage in any type of understanding with you. It's hard to feel like you can't live your life how you want it because of something that you can't control, that is just happening. It just happens to be your body. And it's one of those things where I don't think that I fully know the amount that it's going to affect me just yet. For example, I want kids one day. A lot of people with endometriosis have a difficult time becoming pregnant and having children, and usually they need IVF to do so. Usually they need aid. A lot of the reasons why it can be very important to find solutions to slow down the disease is for that very reason, that you don't want the endo to spread as far or glue organs together that has to do with your egg leaders, because then it can be really difficult to get pregnant because it becomes difficult for the egg to move where it needs to go. Therefore, it is important to start treatment as early as you can to inform people what endometriosis are and of its symptoms, so that people start asking if that's what they have and reading up and realizing, so that they can get maybe hormonal treatment or anything else that might work, so that it can cause as little damage as possible up until the point where you might want to have children. And then there's the fun aspect for a lot of people with endometriosis, is that any type of sexual intercourse can be extremely painful far up in your abdomen, and often leads to a lot of issues within relationships because of it. I'm gonna wash these 2 fingers. Okay, hi from me editing here. That shadow kind of stained my eyes a little bit, so don't mind that. But another thing that I wanted to add that I forgot to say that I used to do growing up is I used to read on my phone, like in school, whenever if I was in pain, try to distract my mind from thinking about the pain. I often try to either listen to music or read on my phone, anything like that, to try to distract my mind from thinking about the pain. If I could, like whenever I had to sit still, I would read, because then I didn't have to think about it. Or I mean, obviously it was always there, it was in the back of my mind, I constantly felt it, but it at least mentally, felt a little bit easier to handle if I was doing something at the same time. I used to do that a lot, and that became an issue socially as well. But that's another thing that I remembered that I used to do to kind of cope with the pain and like tried to distract my mind from it back then whenever I had to sit still and there was nothing else to focus on but the pain. I just thought I'd add that. I'm just gonna put some mascara on. That's what the eyes are looking like right now. I was gonna do something else and I don't remember it right now. I seem to have a little bit of a loss for words right now. So that's really all I can think of right now. I know that I talked about this quite robotically and tried to stay as calm and collected as I possibly could. Maybe that feels insensitive to some of you, and I'm sorry if that's the case, but I personally don't feel like sitting here crying, so that's my way of dealing with that. This is the finished look. If that interested you. I will write everything that I used in the description box below. This video was mostly for informational purposes about endometriosis because it is Endometriosis Awareness Month, and I wanted to make a video kind of discussing it because I've before in my vlogs only mentioned kind of that I have a bit of a pain issue and stuff like that, so now that I've made this video I can kind of discuss it a little bit more openly and maybe what I do to help or things that I'm trying to see if that can help pain-wise, to maybe help someone else. Thank you so much for watching if you did, and if you made it this far, thank you so much, and please subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment, maybe a question about endometriosis, maybe you have it yourself and have some questions, maybe you know someone who has it. It is a very common disease. It wouldn't surprise me if some people watching would have it. But that is it for me this time, and I will see you next time. Bye! If you want to see in daylight what the makeup looks like, I'm actually kind of happy with it. It's a little dark and grungy, but I like it.